Greetings to everyone. I'm glad to have you here. Today's tale is a bittersweet and cautionary one, about a man who thought he had the perfect family, only to uncover a web of lies and betrayal that changed his life forever. For your convenience, the story is divided into chapters. I hope you find it thought-provoking and meaningful. Enjoy your listen. Chapter 1. Looking back, our life seemed like a dream. Sophia, Mia, and me. We were the kind of family people envied. Sophia and I had been married for over 20 years, and our teenage daughter was the light of our lives. I'd built a steady construction business from the ground up, and Sophia, with her elegance and charm, taught music at the local school. Sure, life had its ups and downs, but we were solid. Or at least, I thought we were. Everything started to shift that summer. It was supposed to be a routine evening. We were sitting at the dinner table, Mia chatting about school as Sophia and I listened. Out of nowhere, Sophia brought up an opportunity, a cultural exchange program abroad for musicians. "I've always wanted to do something like this," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I was taken aback. It wasn't like Sophia to think about traveling so far, leaving us behind. "How long would it be?" I asked, trying to sound supportive but failing to mask my hesitation. 3 months, she said, her voice laced with hope. "But it's such a unique opportunity, William. I think it could be life-changing." She went on to explain the program, how it involved performing, networking with renowned artists, and exploring new avenues in music. I could see how much it meant to her. Reluctantly, I nodded. "If it's something you really want, I'll support you." Mia was thrilled for her mother. I, on the other hand, couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The weeks leading up to her departure were strange. Sophia seemed distracted, distant even. She spent more time than usual on her phone, smiling at messages she never shared with me. When I asked her about it, she'd wave it off, saying it was related to the program. I tried to ignore the creeping doubts, chalking them up to my own insecurities. After all, Sophia had never given me a reason to doubt her before. On the day she left, we said our goodbyes at the airport. Sophia hugged Mia tightly, promising to call every day. When she turned to me, I kissed her and whispered, "I'll miss you." "I'll miss you too," she replied, but her eyes didn't meet mine. As I watched her walk away, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this wasn't just a trip. At first, things seemed normal. Sophia called regularly, and she always sounded upbeat, sharing stories about her performances and the people she was meeting. But as the weeks went by, the calls became less frequent. When she did call, her voice sounded distant, almost rehearsed. One evening, Mia asked, "Do you think Mom's happy there?" I smiled and reassured her. "Of course she is. This is her dream, remember?" But inside, I wasn't so sure. The first real crack appeared in an unexpected way. I was sorting through the mail one afternoon when I noticed a letter addressed to Sophia. It was handwritten, the envelope elegant and formal. Curious, I set it aside for her. When she called that evening, I mentioned it. "You got a letter today. Do you want me to open it?" There was a pause, longer than I expected. "No, just leave it," she said quickly. "I'll deal with it when I get back." Her tone was off, nervous, almost panicked. I tried to brush it off, but it stuck with me. Another time, while cleaning the house, I found a receipt tucked under a pile of papers on her desk. It was for an expensive piece of jewelry from a store I didn't recognize. I couldn't remember Sophia mentioning buying anything like that, and it didn't seem like something she'd wear. When I asked her about it during our next call, she laughed nervously. "Oh, that! It was just a gift for a friend I met here. You know, a token of appreciation." I nodded, pretending to believe her. But the doubt gnawed me. By the end of her second month abroad, I was struggling to ignore the signs. Sophia's calls became sporadic, and when she did speak, it felt like she was going through the motions. Mia noticed it too. "She barely asks about me anymore," she said one night, her voice tinged with hurt. I didn't know what to say. The woman who had once been so invested in every detail of our lives now felt like a stranger. Still, I told myself there had to be an explanation. Sophia was chasing a dream, immersing herself in a new world. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe the distance was just getting to me. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. Chapter 2. The first real crack started to widen in Sophia's second month abroad. Her calls, already infrequent, began to feel rehearsed. She no longer asked about my work or Mia's school. Instead, she'd talk about performances, dinners with colleagues, and occasional sightseeing. Her tone was upbeat, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was holding something back. One night, as I was cleaning up after dinner, Mia approached me. "Dad, do you think Mom's okay?" I froze, wiping my hands on a dish towel. "What do you mean, sweetheart? She just doesn't sound like herself. It's like she's not really paying attention when I talk to her," she said, her voice heavy with concern. I ruffled her hair and forced a smile. "Your mom's just busy with her work over there. You know how she gets when she's focused." Mia nodded but didn't look convinced. The truth was, neither was I. The next morning, I found myself staring at Sophia's forgotten tablet. She'd left it behind, saying it was too bulky to carry with her. For weeks, it had gathered dust in a drawer, but now it felt like it was daring me to open it. I hesitated. Snooping wasn't something I did, but the doubts were eating away at me. With trembling hands, I unlocked it using the password I knew she hadn't changed. At first, I found nothing unusual: emails from her school, documents related to the exchange program. But then, I stumbled upon a folder hidden deep in her inbox, labeled Drafts. My heart pounded as I opened it. The messages weren't sent but revealed everything. They were notes Sophia had written but never had the courage, or the recklessness, to send. One read, "I can't keep living this lie. William deserves better, but I'm suffocating in our life. With you, it feels different, exciting, freeing. What am I supposed to do?" Another, "I don't want to hurt them. I love them. But I love what I've found here too." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. Suffocating? A lie. And who was she talking to? I spent the rest of the day in a haze, replaying her words over and over in my mind. That evening, Mia asked if we could call her mom together. I forced a smile and agreed. When Sophia answered, her voice was warm and cheerful, but to me, it sounded hollow. Mia chattered about her school projects, and I watched as her face lit up when her mother responded with enthusiasm. But I wasn't listening to their conversation. My mind was fixated on the drafts I'd read earlier. When Mia handed me the phone, I forced myself to sound normal. "How's everything going over there?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Busy as always," she replied. "But it's been amazing, William. You'd love it here, the architecture, the music, the people. It's magical." I bit my tongue, swallowing the urge to confront her. "That's great," I said instead. "We miss you here. Mia misses you. I miss you both too," she said, her voice softening. "I'll be home before you know it." Her words should have reassured me, but they didn't. The breaking point came a week later, when a letter arrived in the mail. The envelope was elegant, addressed to Sophia in neat, cursive handwriting. Normally, I would have set it aside for her, but this time, I couldn't resist. I opened it carefully, hoping to preserve the seal. Inside was a handwritten note. "Sophia, thank you for the incredible evening. You're truly one of a kind, and I can't wait until our next meeting. D." My blood ran cold. D? Could it be Daniel? The name had come up once or twice during our calls, always casually, always in passing. He was just a patron of the arts, she'd said, someone who supported the program. The note confirmed what I had suspected all along. Sophia wasn't just busy with her work. She was busy with someone else. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing with questions. How long had this been going on? Did it start before she left, or had it all unfolded while she was away? Was she still the woman I thought I knew, or had she been hiding this part of herself all along? Mia came into my room at some point, startled by the light still on. "Are you okay, Dad?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, just couldn't sleep." "Go back to bed, sweetheart." As she left, I knew I couldn't keep this to myself much longer. I needed answers. I needed the truth, no matter how painful it might be. A few days later, I got my chance. Sophia called me unexpectedly in the middle of the day. "Hey," she said, her voice bright. "I just wanted to check in. How are you and Mia?" "We're fine," I said curtly. "But I need to ask you something." She hesitated. "Okay, what's on your mind?" "Who's Dee?" I asked bluntly. There was silence on the other end of the line. For a moment, I thought the call had dropped. Then she spoke, her voice trembling. "What are you talking about?" "Don't lie to me, Sophia," I said, my voice firm. "I found the note. Don't pretend you don't know what I mean." Her response was immediate. "William, it's not what you think. Dee is just a friend, someone I've been working with. There's nothing going on." Her denial only fueled my anger. "A friend who sends you notes like that? A friend you write about in your drafts, saying you feel alive again? Do you even hear yourself?" Her silence was deafening. Finally, she said, "We'll talk about this when I get home." But I wasn't willing to wait. "You've already said enough," I replied, hanging up before she could respond. As I stared at the phone in my hand, I knew one thing for sure. When she came back, everything would change. Chapter 3. Sophia's return was anything but the joyful reunion I had once imagined. She arrived a few weeks later, her luggage in tow, and an almost forced cheerfulness in her voice. Mia ran to greet her, arms wide, but I stayed back, watching. Her smile faltered when our eyes met. She knew I hadn't forgotten. That first evening, we played our parts. We sat at the dinner table as a family, chatting about Mia's school projects and Sophia's trip. She spoke animatedly, describing her performances and the people she met. But her words felt hollow, like rehearsed lines in a poorly written play. Later that night, after Mia went to bed, I decided it was time. "We need to talk," I said, standing in the doorway of our bedroom. She looked up from unpacking her suitcase, her hands trembling slightly. "About what?" "About Dee. About the notes. About everything you've been hiding from me." Her face went pale. "William, it's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is," I said, stepping closer. "Because what I think is that you've been lying to me for months. I think you've been seeing someone else, and I need you to tell me the truth." Her shoulders sagged as she sat down on the edge of the bed. "I never meant for this to happen," she whispered. As she spoke, her words came out in a jumble of excuses, half-truths, and vague admissions. She met Daniel during the exchange program, she said, describing him as a patron of the arts who admired her talent. At first, their relationship was strictly professional. Dinners to discuss music, events where she performed for his wealthy friends. "But then it changed," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "Changed how?" I demanded, my anger barely contained. She hesitated, then said, "I started to feel something for him. He made me feel alive, like I hadn't felt in years." Her words were like a knife to the gut. "And I didn't make you feel that way?" It's not about you, William, she said quickly. You've always been wonderful. But after so many years, I felt invisible. Daniel made me feel seen. I shook my head, pacing the room. Do you even hear yourself? You felt invisible? I've supported you through everything, Sophia. I've been here, raising our daughter, building a life with you. And you throw it all away because some stranger flatters you? She started to cry, but I didn't care. It wasn't supposed to go this far, she said between sobs. I thought it was harmless at first, just someone to talk to. But then it got complicated, and I didn't know how to stop. Complicated? I snapped. That's your excuse? Complicated? I didn't sleep with him, she blurted out, her voice desperate. I stopped pacing and stared at her. Do you honestly expect me to believe that? It's the truth, she insisted. There were moments where it could have happened, but I stopped it. I swear, William. Her words hung in the air, but they didn't bring me any comfort. Whether or not she crossed that line didn't matter anymore. She had already betrayed me, betrayed us. Over the next few days, things were tense between us. Sophia tried to act as though things could go back to normal, but I couldn't look at her without feeling the weight of her betrayal. Mia began to notice the tension. Is something wrong between you and Mom? She asked one evening as we cleaned up after dinner. No, sweetheart, I lied. Everything's fine. But she didn't look convinced. One afternoon, while Sophia was out running errands, I decided to dig deeper. I couldn't rely on her words alone. I needed the truth. I remembered the tablet I had found before and retrieved it from the drawer. This time, I searched her messages, her emails, her social media accounts. What I found only deepened the wound. There were more messages from Daniel, flirty, intimate, and filled with promises. I can't wait to see you again. Dinner on Friday? You're incredible, Sophia. No one has ever inspired me like you do. And then, the one that made my blood run cold. Let's not overthink this. We deserve to be happy, don't we? I slammed the tablet shut, my hands trembling with rage. Whatever excuses she had given me before were meaningless now. She hadn't just made a mistake. She had built an entire web of lies to cover her tracks. That evening, I confronted her again. I saw the messages, I said as soon as she walked through the door. She froze, her eyes wide with panic. What messages? Don't play dumb, Sophia, I snapped. The ones from Daniel. The dinners, the compliments, the promises. You said it wasn't serious, but he thinks otherwise, doesn't he? She sat down, burying her face in her hands. I didn't want you to find out this way, she said softly. How else was I supposed to find out? I shot back. Were you planning to tell me? Or were you just going to keep lying until I caught you in the act? I was going to end it, she said, her voice trembling. I told him it couldn't continue. That's why I came back home. Do you really think that changes anything? I asked, my voice rising. You still lied to me. You still betrayed our family. Her silence was answer enough. Chapter 4. The days after Sophia left were a blur. I spent most of my time trying to keep the house running for Mia's sake. I threw myself into work and busied myself with chores, anything to keep my mind from spiraling into the chaos of questions I couldn't answer. But no matter how hard I tried, Sophia's betrayal lingered like a shadow. A part of me hoped she'd reach out, that she'd explain everything and somehow make it all right. Instead, her messages were infrequent and perfunctory, polite updates about her living situation or a casual, "How's Mia?" I responded briefly, not willing to engage beyond what was necessary. But deep down, I wasn't ready to let it go. One evening, about a month after she left, I received a call from an old friend, Jack, who had been traveling for work. "William," he said, his voice hesitant. I wasn't sure if I should tell you this, but I thought you should know. I just saw Sophia. I sat up straight. You saw her? Where? In Vienna, he replied. She was at a cafe. But she wasn't alone. His words hit me like a freight train. Who was she with? A man, Jack said cautiously. I didn't recognize him, but they looked close. I'm sorry, William. I thought you should know. I thanked him and hung up, my hands trembling. This was it, the confirmation I had been dreading. I couldn't sit idly by anymore. I needed to see the truth for myself. I booked a flight to Vienna that same night. Mia was staying with her grandparents for the weekend, giving me the perfect opportunity to confront Sophia on neutral ground. The flight felt endless, my mind racing with every possible scenario. When I arrived in the city, I reached out to Jack for the name of the cafe where he had seen her. It didn't take long to find it, a quaint little place on a quiet street. I sat at a table near the back, nursing a coffee and scanning the room for any sign of her. Hours passed with no luck. Just as I was beginning to lose hope, I saw her. Sophia walked into the cafe, her hair perfectly styled and her makeup flawless. She wore a dress I didn't recognize, sleek and elegant, something that screamed sophistication. But what caught my attention wasn't her appearance. It was the man following closely behind her. He was tall, sharply dressed, and exuded the kind of confidence that made people notice him. They sat at a table near the window, laughing softly as they spoke. My heart sank. This wasn't a professional meeting. This was personal. I waited until they ordered their drinks before making my move. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached their table. Sophia's laughter froze in her throat the moment she saw me. Her face went pale. William, she stammered, standing up quickly. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing, I said, my voice cold. My eyes shifted to the man beside her. And who's this? The man, to his credit, looked surprised but not defensive. He extended a hand. Daniel, a colleague of Sophia's. I ignored his hand, turning back to her. A colleague? I repeated. Is that what we're calling it now? William, please, Sophia whispered, glancing around nervously. Let's not do this here. No, I said firmly. We're doing this now. You've been lying to me for months. I want the truth, Sophia. Who is he? What's going on between you two? Her lips trembled, but she didn't answer. Instead, Daniel stood up, his expression calm but wary. I think it's best if I leave, he said, nodding politely to me before walking out of the cafe. Once he was gone, I turned back to Sophia. Start talking, I demanded. She gestured for me to sit, and reluctantly I did. Her hands shook as she clasped them together on the table. It's not what you think, she began. Then tell me what it is, I snapped. She sighed, her shoulders sagging. I met Daniel during the exchange program. He became a friend, someone I could talk to. At first, it was innocent. But then, she hesitated, her voice cracking. Then it became more. How much more? I asked, my voice dangerously low. She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. We didn't sleep together. But I developed feelings for him. I was lonely, William. I felt invisible. Her words stung, but I didn't let them distract me. So all those lies, all those nights you said you were working late or meeting colleagues, those were with him. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, William. I didn't mean for this to happen. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of her confession settling over me. Did you ever think about what this would do to me? To Mia? Or were you too busy feeling alive again to care? Her sobs grew louder, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. I came back to end it, she said finally. I realized I couldn't keep living like this. I love you, William. I love our family. Love? I laughed bitterly. You have a funny way of showing it. We left the cafe in silence. I walked her back to her apartment, where she tried to explain herself further. But the damage was done. I couldn't trust her anymore, and I told her as much. You made your choice, Sophia, I said, standing in the doorway. Now I have to make mine. What does that mean? She asked, her voice trembling. It means we're done, I said firmly. I'll take care of Mia. You can figure out the rest. Her sobs followed me as I walked away, but I didn't look back. On the flight home, I stared out the window, the city lights below blurring into streaks of gold. I thought about the life we had built, the family we had shared, and how it all fell apart. Mia deserved the truth, but I didn't know how to tell her. All I knew was that I had to protect her, even if it meant rebuilding our lives from scratch. I wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was certain. The person I thought I knew, the woman I had loved for over 2 decades, was gone. Chapter 5. Sophia didn't reach out for several days after I returned home. The silence was deafening, but I needed it to gather my thoughts. I had told Mia that her mother was staying with a friend for a while. She asked a few questions, but I dodged them as best I could. Deep down, I knew I couldn't keep the truth from her forever. One quiet evening, as I cleaned up after dinner, Mia sat at the table, her homework untouched. Her voice was hesitant when she finally spoke. Dad, is Mom ever coming back? I paused mid-step, gripping the plate in my hands tightly. I placed it on the counter and turned to her. Your mom, she made some decisions that hurt our family, I said carefully. She needs time to figure things out. Mia frowned. Did she leave because of me? I rushed to her side, kneeling down and placing my hands on her shoulders. No, sweetheart. This has nothing to do with you. Your mom and I we're trying to work through some grown-up problems. But I promise you, I'm here for you. Always. She nodded, but I could see the sadness in her eyes. After she went to bed, I found myself sitting alone in the living room, staring at Sophia's tablet. I hadn't touched it since I discovered her messages with Daniel, but tonight, something urged me to take another look. Scrolling through her emails, I came across something new, a series of receipts from expensive restaurants and hotels. All of them were from the same time period as her work trips. Then I found it, a booking confirmation for a weekend getaway. The guest names listed were Sophia and Daniel. My breath caught in my throat. All of her denials, her tears, her promises, it was all a lie. The next morning, I decided I needed more answers. I called Sophia. She picked up after a few rings, her voice wary. William, she said cautiously. I found the receipts, I said bluntly. The hotels, the dinners, the weekend trips. How much longer were you planning to keep lying to me? There was silence on the other end. Then she sighed. I don't know what you want me to say, she admitted. I want the truth, Sophia. The whole truth. No more excuses, no more half answers. She hesitated before speaking. Daniel and I, we went away together. But it wasn't what you think. It was complicated. Complicated? I snapped. You've been saying that word a lot lately. What does it even mean? It means I didn't know how to stop, she said, her voice breaking. I was in too deep, William. I didn't know how to get out. Her words filled me with a mix of anger and heartbreak. Do you even realize what you've done? To me? To Mia? You didn't just hurt me, Sophia. You broke our family. Her sobs were audible over the phone, but I felt no sympathy. I never wanted to hurt you, she whispered. I I lost myself somewhere along the way. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I hung up, letting the silence wash over me. That evening, Mia approached me with a photo album in her hands. She sat beside me on the couch and opened it, flipping through the pages. "Remember this?" she said, pointing to a picture of the three of us at the beach. I smiled faintly. "Yeah, that was a good day. We were so happy back then," she said softly. "Why did things have to change?" I didn't have an answer. All I could do was hold her close and promise her that no matter what, we would get through this together. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the end. There were still pieces of the puzzle missing, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to find them. Chapter 6. The days blurred together after that phone call with Sophia. I tried to focus on work, on Mia, on anything that would keep me from drowning in my thoughts. But the weight of unanswered questions hung over me like a storm cloud. Sophia called occasionally, but I let most of her calls go to voicemail. Her messages were always the same: apologies, pleased to talk, assurances that she wanted to make things right. But every word felt hollow. One evening, while sorting through old paperwork in the study, I stumbled across something unexpected. It was Sophia's old journal, tucked away on a high shelf. I hesitated before opening it, torn between respecting her privacy and my desperate need for answers. The entry started innocently enough: reflections on her music, funny anecdotes about Mia, notes about family vacations. But as I flipped through the pages, the tone began to change. "I feel like I'm fading into the background of my own life. William is wonderful, but I don't know who I am anymore. The person I used to be feels like a distant memory. Today, Daniel told me I have the most captivating smile he's ever seen. It's been so long since someone noticed me like that. It felt nice." Each word was a dagger to the heart. She hadn't just stumbled into this affair. It had been brewing for months, possibly years. That night, Sophia called again. This time I answered. "What do you want, Sophia?" I asked, my tone cold. "I want to talk," she said softly. "I want to explain everything." "You've had plenty of chances to explain," I replied. "But all you've done is lie to me." There was a long pause. Then she said, "I'm not lying now. Please just meet me. One last time." We met the next day at a small park near her parents' house. She looked exhausted, as if the weight of her choices was finally catching up to her. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this," she began. "I messed up. I let myself believe that what I was doing didn't matter because it didn't change how much I love you or Mia. But I see now how wrong I was." I crossed my arms, keeping my distance. "And Daniel? Where does he fit into this?" "It's over," she said quickly. "I ended things with him the moment I realized what I was risking. He was an escape, William. A way to feel something I thought I'd lost. But I never stopped loving you." Her words sounded sincere, but I couldn't ignore the betrayal. "Do you even understand what you've done to our family?" I asked, my voice rising. "You don't just get to walk away from this and pretend it didn't happen." "I know," she said, her voice trembling. "And I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. I'll go to counseling. I'll prove to you that I can change. Just don't give up on us." I stared at her, torn between anger and the faintest glimmer of hope. For years, Sophia had been my partner, my confidant, the person I trusted most in the world. But now, that trust was shattered. Could we ever rebuild it? "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said finally. "But I'll think about it. For Mia's sake." Her shoulders sagged with relief, but I wasn't done. "Don't mistake this for reconciliation. You need to prove to me that you're serious about fixing this. And if I ever find out you're lying again—" "You won't," she interrupted. "I swear, William. I'll do whatever it takes." When I got home, Mia was waiting for me. "Did you see Mom?" she asked. "Yes," I said, sitting down beside her. "Is she coming back?" I hesitated, then said, "Maybe, but only if she can show us that she's willing to change." Mia nodded, her expression unreadable. "I hope she does," she said quietly. That night, I sat alone in the living room, replaying the conversation in my head. Sophia's words echoed in my mind, but so did the entries from her journal and the messages from Daniel. Could I really trust her again? Or was this just the beginning of a new kind of betrayal? Chapter 7. Days turned into weeks, and Sophia's absence became a new normal in our household. Mia adjusted better than I expected, though I could tell she missed her mother. I tried to keep life as steady as possible for her, helping with homework, planning outings, and making time for conversations. But the weight of everything I had learned about Sophia hung heavy in the back of my mind. Sophia called occasionally, sticking to her promise of trying to rebuild trust. Her voice was careful, measured. She asked about Mia, apologized often, and tried to convince me that she was serious about change. But every conversation left me feeling hollow. One day, while tidying up the house, I came across an envelope in the back of a kitchen drawer. It was addressed to Sophia, but it was unopened. I stared at it for a moment, debating whether to toss it aside or open it. Curiosity won. The letter inside wasn't long, but it was enough to reignite my doubts. "Sophia, I've been patient, but I need an answer. You said you'd leave him. What are you waiting for? D." The rage that surged through me was almost blinding. After everything she had said, her apologies, her promises, this letter proved that Daniel had expected something more. And if he expected it, that meant she'd given him reason to. I called Sophia immediately, my hands trembling as I held the phone. She picked up on the second ring. "William?" she answered, her tone cautious. "You lied to me," I said, my voice cold. "What?" "No, I didn't. Don't even try," I interrupted. "I found the letter from Daniel. He was expecting you to leave me. Care to explain that?" There was silence on the other end. Then she said softly, "I didn't leave you for him. I couldn't do that to you or Mia. But you considered it, didn't you?" I shot back. She didn't answer. That was answer enough. That evening, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called Daniel. I had saved his number from Sophia's phone the night we met in Vienna, though I'd hoped I'd never have to use it. He answered after a few rings, his voice calm and composed. "Hello? It's William," I said. "Sophia's husband." There was a pause. Then, "I figured I'd hear from you eventually. I need answers," I said bluntly. "And I'm done asking Sophia. So you're going to tell me the truth." Daniel sighed. "What do you want to know?" "Everything," I said. "How long this has been going on? What she told you? What you told her? Everything." He hesitated but eventually began to speak. "We met during the exchange program, like she told you. At first, it was just friendly conversations. But then, things escalated. She confided in me about how she felt stuck, how she wanted more from life. I told her I could give her that. Did you love her?" I asked, my voice tight. "I thought I did," he admitted. "But looking back, I think I was more in love with the idea of her. The artist, the dreamer. She made me feel alive, too. And did she plan to leave me?" He paused before answering. "She talked about it. She said she wanted to, but she couldn't because of Mia. She loved her too much to break her family apart." I hung up the phone feeling both vindicated and defeated. Daniel's words confirmed what I had feared most. Sophia had seriously considered abandoning our life together. That night, I told Mia everything. We sat at the kitchen table, the weight of the conversation pressing down on us. Your mom made some choices that hurt us both, I began. She let someone else into her life, someone who made her forget about what we had as a family. Mia's eyes filled with tears. Does that mean you don't love each other anymore? I swallowed hard. I'll always care about your mom, but love has to come with trust. And right now, that trust is broken. She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. I just want us to be happy again. I do too, I said, pulling her into a hug. And we will be. I promise. The next day, I called Sophia and told her that it was over. I explained that I couldn't keep putting Mia and myself through the pain of trying to fix something that was too broken to heal. She cried, pleaded, and begged for another chance. But I stayed firm. We'll work out how to co-parent Mia, I said. But as for us, it's done. In the weeks that followed, I felt an odd mix of sadness and relief. Sadness for what we had lost, but relief for what I had regained, my dignity, my peace, and the chance to rebuild my life. Mia and I found a new rhythm together. It wasn't always easy, but it was ours. And as I watched her smile return little by little, I knew I had made the right choice. Sophia moved in with her parents and saw Mia on weekends. She continued to send me messages, hoping to reconcile, but I didn't respond. My focus was on my daughter and the life we were creating. One evening, as Mia and I sat on the porch watching the sunset, she turned to me and said, "Do you think we'll ever feel like a family again?" I smiled softly, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "We already are, sweetheart. It's just a different kind of family now." She rested her head against my shoulder, and for the first time in a long while, I felt at peace. Chapter 8. The months that followed were a mix of rebuilding and reflecting. Sophia's betrayal had left scars, but they weren't the kind that would break me forever. Instead, they reminded me of what was most important: Mia, my own sense of self, and the future we still had ahead of us. Sophia reached out occasionally, sending messages asking about Mia or offering another apology. I kept the conversations brief, focused solely on co-parenting. The wounds she left behind didn't close overnight, but I learned how to live with them, and in time, they stopped bleeding. One weekend, Sophia came to pick up Mia for her usual visit. It was the first time we'd seen each other in weeks. She looked different, more subdued, almost fragile. "How's everything?" she asked cautiously as Mia went to grab her bag. "Fine," I said simply. "We're managing." She nodded, her eyes darting around, searching for something to say. "I want you to know, William, I regret everything. I know I ruined what we had, and I'll never forgive myself for it." I met her gaze, feeling the weight of her words. "I hope you find peace, Sophia. But for me, it's time to move forward." She nodded, her expression crumpling slightly. "Take care of yourself," she said before turning to leave with Mia. The quiet after they left felt different this time. It wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence that had followed her betrayal. It was the kind of quiet that signaled a fresh start, a blank slate. In the months that followed, Mia and I found new ways to create joy. We started having regular movie nights, taking weekend trips to places we'd always talked about visiting, and even started cooking dinners together, a chaotic but fun bonding experience. One evening, as we sat at the table eating a slightly overcooked lasagna, Mia smiled at me and said, "I think this might be the best meal we've ever made." I laughed. "It's definitely the most memorable." Her laughter filled the room, and in that moment, I realized we were healing. Slowly but surely, we were building something new. One day, while cleaning out the attic, I stumbled across an old box of photo albums. Flipping through the pages, I saw the life Sophia and I had shared, the vacations, the birthdays, the quiet moments that seemed so simple at the time but now carried so much weight. I didn't feel anger or sadness as I looked at the photos. Instead, I felt gratitude. For all the mistakes and heartbreak, there had been love, too. It wasn't enough to last, but it was enough to leave its mark. I tucked the album back into the box and carried it downstairs. When Mia came home from school, I showed it to her. "Wow," she said, flipping through the pages. "We had some good times, didn't we?" "We did," I said, sitting beside her. "And we'll have more. They'll just look a little different." She smiled, leaning her head against my shoulder. "I think I'm okay with that." As the seasons changed, so did we. Mia grew more confident, her laughter becoming more frequent. I found new hobbies, new friendships, and even the courage to dream about the future again. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Mia turned to me. "Dad, do you think you'll ever fall in love again?" The question caught me off guard, but I smiled. "Maybe," I said. "But for now, I'm happy just being here with you." She nodded, her eyes twinkling with the light of the setting sun. "Me too." In the end, life wasn't what I thought it would be. It wasn't the perfect picture I had painted in my head when Sophia and I first said our vows. But it was real, and it was ours. We weren't shattered anymore. We were something new, something stronger.